Well, first of all, thanks a lot, Gabby, for doing this interview with me right inside the Supreme Court building, if I understand that correctly, with nice painting.
Yes, I'm right now at the gowning room. So this is where you normally change into your gowns, your official clothes when you appear here before the court. And right behind there is a beautiful painting here of the court.
Right. How does it feel for you going into the Supreme Court building, the courtroom itself, facing the nine justices? So we've got nine justices. Talk about your experience. How you feeling right now?
It was overwhelming. Of course, it was my first appearance here before the court. I was impressed by how broadly Canada is represented in the court, with judges coming from different provinces and different experiences. And I was personally particularly impressed by Justice Rowe, who is from different land. It is something was very Canadian to hear that it was very heartwarming for me being from Halifax to hear that kind of. Pardon me. Sorry. So let me start again. So it was heartwarming for me to hear an Atlantic Canadian accent from the Supreme Court bench.
Do you say it's Justice Rowe? The audio was lost a little bit. What's the name?
So Justice Rowe is from Newfoundland,
I see.
and it was really a heartwarming experience to hear someone speaking in Atlantic Canadian accent right from the bench of the Supreme Court. And it made me also reflect on how inclusive and representative the Supreme Court is. I was also impressed by how respectful the hearing was and how much interested judges were in the case and how much they were really wanting to get it right.
Right. So I'll get into the questions.
At a personal level, when the court came in, and I felt really bewildered. The Chief Justice of Canada just looked at me and smiled at me, in a way, kind of putting me at ease. Okay, we are not here to eat you. We are just here to ask you some questions. I felt very encouraged by the gestures of the court, by how open they were to everybody's argument and how much they were keen on making sure that they hear all possible angles, that they get all the information they need for their decision making.
Yeah. So one thing that intrigued me the most is obviously the presentation was interesting, but it's the questions, the probing questions, and sometimes pointed questions or observation the justice made, and yourself and the lawyers. I mean, I have to always say, hey, you're not a lawyer, so yourself and the other lawyers present. So how does that experience for you in the courtroom, from your own experience answering the questions and seeing other being challenges? What do you think about the case? I guess maybe I should bring that up to that as a whole. How do you feel about the case itself?
First of all, when you go to court, and especially appellate courts, you expect to be grilled about the law. That's the whole experience of an appellate advocacy. The judges want to get it right. And that's a normal situation. You don't just go there and present your spiel and the judge is not. It doesn't happen that way in many cases. In this context, you know, in some sense, I was feeling sorry for the second lawyer for Delta. I felt that he was not really ready for being bombarded with questions, and it was really surprising for me because I have been in courts officially many times to know that yes, that's what happens. The court will be asking you lots of questions, and that's life. In terms of I think the star of the day was actually the Amicus Curiae, Mr. Zarnett. His presentation was absolutely spectacular. I was also very impressed by the presentation of Byron Williams for making submissions for the Canadian Council of Disabilities. He was able in 5 minutes to be so dense and so clear in his argument that I was incredibly grateful for what he was saying, and it was just remarkable.
Right. So, I don't know all the lawyers' name and who is who, but I think I got that right. The Amicus Curiae is the lawyer that initially he seems to be very slow pace, explaining things, and the judges asking questions. But I think it ended up bringing a very crucial question, right, and bring up concerns for the court. So can you?
Yes, and the court was asking questions that the judges feel that they need in order to decide the case. So in the appellate level, it is really about what the judges feel they need to know to make a good decision. It's not really what you want to say. It's about the judges ask you what points they are interested in, and you have to be ready for that.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I was hearing initially the judges seems to be, at least they were saying they are confused and whatnot, but then slowly, and as the lawyer explained, and I think he made a very clear point, and the judges realized, oh, okay, well, that's another way of looking at it, and seems to be, at least for a layman like myself, it seems like the Supreme Court justice were originally I don't want to say mislead, but got a different feeling or different understanding from the briefing than when the question and answer was going on. Is that right? I mean, did I get that bit correct?
I'm not so sure. I mean, my impression was that the judges were uncertain. They were somewhat confused even after reading the briefs, and even after the hearing, they may still be confused and uncertain how the law works, what the law says.
Right. Okay, so back onto the case itself. So how do you feel about your own presentation? Were you able to make the points that you want to get across, and when the judges answer you? I mean, to me, again, as a layman looking at it, I mean, although I've followed different court cases and followed your case and other case, I mean, I don't want the excitement part get to me too much. So how do you feel about your own presentation and the judges' question challenging you? I mean, were you able to handle them all, or what is the main takeaway?
It's an interesting question. I thought that given that this was my first appearance, I handled things well, bearing that in mind. Obviously, I don't have the expertise and skills and knowledge of Mr. Zarnett, who I really thought it was the star of the day. I'm really grateful for how he was presenting matters. In terms of covering points, I covered maybe 2/3 of the points that I wanted. Most of the main points have been delivered, at least in some way. What I'm feeling happy with that I was able to roll with the blows. So in any major appeal, you go in and you go in to be questioned. That's the purpose of the hearing. So what you need to do is to be able to answer the questions and then get it back to where you want to be in your line of arguments.
Right. So I'm guessing the Delta lawyers are not going to grant me interview, so I'm going to ask you, although I'm sure you have bias, but then what do you feel about Delta's presentation today, and what do you think about the arguments and the judge's question? And it seems like maybe it's just, again, from my layman's perspective, it seems like at points the two Delta lawyers were kind of speechless in a kind of a bad way and not able to answer the judge's questions. What's your thought? What's your take?
I would tend to agree with that. However, I would caution that this doesn't mean that the outcome is going to be favorable to me. Delta's lawyers were really not handling the situation well, especially the second lawyer who spoke. They didn't look like they had a lot of message. They didn't deliver any enthusiasm. They were lacking energy, lacking a big picture theory of what the case was about. I'm reminded of two moments from that hearing. One is when Chief Justice of Canada told Mr. Martins that they have against them the Federal Court of Appeals judgment making some findings that it was unreasonable, and that was a big warning. Please give us something other than platitudes. The second time, Justice Moldaver also really almost expressed dismay that they are not putting forward the best possible arguments, what he might have put forward had he been in their shoes, which was an interesting point as well. I don't know what is really what was going on their side. I certainly felt sorry, especially for the second lawyer who spoke, because he was really not doing the best job for his clients, in my opinion. Certainly, if I had been in his shoes, probably would have been able to marshal the arguments in a bit more logical, clear way, looking at the big picture, giving a theory. It almost felt as if they were too used to arguing things at a trial court level or maybe provincial appellate court level, where you are focusing on the case itself. And the Supreme Court of Canada, they care about administration of justice as a big picture. How is this principle going to work across Canada? And I don't think that they were able to satisfy that type of appetite, that kind of curiosity from the courts, from the judges as to, okay, how is it going to affect the big picture? I would like to stress again that I don't think that at this level, the outcome will necessarily depend on how good their presentations were.
Right.
I could feel that the court was concerned about the lack of what they may perceive as lack of deference by the Federal Court of Appeal to the agency, and how you draw that line. On the one hand, you want to allow administrative bodies like the agency to do their job and to have this margin to handle matters. But at the same time, you also want to ensure that cases like this don't happen, where something which is a serious issue gets just short shrift, and therefore it gets ignored.
Right. So I forgot which lawyer during which lawyer's presentation, and what was the I wasn't able to type out the whole context. But I do remember this line. One of the justices said, he said, "I think the rule of law just died a little bit." I forgot what was like. Do you remember that line? That was.
I've also seen it observed by someone else who was listening. I missed that point. It was Justice Rowe, actually, from Newfoundland, who was pointing it out. I could really see on him the unease about shutting the door completely to public interest standing, to just taking it a very, very narrow view of what the agency does. He was probably the most uncomfortable among the disabilities, in my impression, with that perspective.
Right. And was that during the presentation by the lawyer from the Canadian Transport Agency, or was it the Delta lawyers? Do you remember?
I don't remember that. I would have to rewatch or re-listen to it, and in the coming days I probably won't be doing that. But it was a very nice observation from as a comment, as a line.
Right. So you talked about Delta. How about the Canadian Transportation Agency's legal presentation and answering questions and whatnot? What's your quick take on that?
I certainly think that Mr. Matti, the lawyer for the CTA, did a better job for his role than Delta. He didn't have much to say in some ways, but he was not looking at someone who is kind of fumbling and who is not comfortable with the situation. I think highly of him in terms of his presentation skills. I appeared against him in the past before the Federal Court of Appeal, and he is very good with fighting case even when he has very little ammunition. And I have also a lot of sympathy for him, because Mr. Murray has to adjust what he's saying to the not always most reasonable and rational.
Your audio broke up quite a bit in the last 15 seconds. Can you repeat?
Okay, let me try it. So, I feel for Mr. Matti, he has to serve the somewhat whimsical decisions of his bosses, the members of the Canadian Transportation Agency. So he has to basically present the position that they want him to present. And I think it always does a very good job with it. I have a great respect for his legal skills, and he's very eloquent. And in a previous case where really the case of the agency lost against me, he was fighting in a truly heroic way, even though his client, Canadian Transportation Agency, had a terrible case, and he would not just give up. He would fight and fight and fight. It was very impressive. So for Mr. Muti, I have a great respect in terms of his legal skills.
Right. So let me get back to let me talk more about the case, asking you more about the court case, and then get back to some of the human interest thing that happens at the end. So, in terms of this whole legal presentation, all the various legal questions the justice asks and whatnot, what are some of the key takeaways, like 3 or 5 key takeaways that you have today that you want to share with us?
It's hard to say. It was it's happening so fast and so intensively. I'm not sure what kind of takeaway about how to prepare for next case or about this specific case.
Yeah, about this specific case. Let's say questions asked by the justice, or like legal things that, hey, well, they raised this and I was able to handle this, or like and they challenged that lawyer about this or this particular issue. So kind of that stuff like that for this case with
the comparison with the Human Rights Act was interesting. And Justice Isabella quizzed me on that, and I was very happy to be able to answer that question right on the spot and right away direct her to another section of the Act. So there was a question about what I said, that the Human Rights Act is a victim-focused act, where you don't need a license showing that you are respecting human rights, but you do need a license to fly to and from Canada, so that the two things are not comparable. I thought that was in a way a moment where I felt good about my preparation, and I was able to give an answer that I'm not sure whether it satisfied Justice Isabella, but it probably satisfied other judges on the bench.
Right. So yeah, I take a whole bunch of notes and whatnot. I was counting to be able to play back the whole video right away. That isn't an option. I even put down time codes. So I'm sure we'll talk some more in the coming days on this. But so let me end on human. Just at the end of the day, lawyers and you yourself and the justice are all human. So the only video clip that I took on the screen itself was at the end you shook hands with the various lawyers. How did you feel at that moment when everything is done? It's like, okay, it's all done. It's on the justice hands. What are you thinking?
I think first of all, shaking hands with the people who are on my side are obviously, for everybody, is easy. But good lawyers or really or excellent lawyers don't take the conflicts that they may have with opposing counsel into the personal sphere. So it's unfortunately less and less lawyers represent that style and culture of communication, but I have a far more respect and far more fear from lawyers who are super nice socially but fierce in their arguments than people who actually take out the personal difference, take out differences in legal position as personal differences. So I really love some of those old-fashioned, older generation lawyers who will argue tooth and nail in court, but after the court will say, let's go and have a beer. And that's all that is fine. And this is an important thing, that just because we have differing opinions, differing perspectives in court, it doesn't mean that we hate the other person. This is not family law after all.
Right. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Gabby, for doing this interview with me today.
Thank you very much, Kempton. I look forward to the video. Hopefully it will come out well, or some of it came out well.
Okay, we'll see.